Welcome to Family History Mysteries, a podcast that tells the stories uncovered through family history research, the unexpected stories of everyday people. I am an avid family historian who has been compiling my family tree for over 15 years, with nearly 20,000 people recorded in my trees. And please put a review on my podcast. That will certainly help in getting the word out there and creating more listenership. Episode 159, The Golden Eagle Nugget. The Golden Eagle Nugget was discovered by 17-year-old Jim Larcombe at Larkinsville in Western Australia in January 1931. It was 1,135 ounces and was named due to its resemblance to the majestic bird. It was a headline-grabbing national sensation before being sold to the Western Australian government. On the 7th of February, it announces in detail the story. In conversation with his father, Mr. Larcombe, the Mirror was told how the nugget was found. Here's the story. When I took over the patch from Shan, I felt sure I would find colour. I had a theory that the cement shelf covered gold. A few days before the big strike, my son, who'd been with 2 other diggers, came to me and said that they'd decided to abandon their claim and push on. I said to the boy, "I'm getting a bit of colour here and you may as well work with me." It was particularly hot, and just before we became rich, I advised the boy to rest off for a while and I would put the dirt through the shaker. He went quiet for a time, then commenced on a hole. To give you an idea of the depth, I might say the cement shelf averaged about 12 inches below the surface and was about 6 inches to 8 inches in thickness. So that following my theory, we went down an average of 18 to 27 inches. After digging for a few minutes, the boy called out, "I've got it, Dad." And I rushed over and saw that the end was sticking out. I got one hand on it but could not move it. However, I quickly got 2 hands on and gave it a mighty tug, which brought the nugget out of its pocket. With a tremendous heave, for it was embedded in cement, I threw the nugget onto the side of the overturned dirt at the top of the hole and quickly realised that we had secured something out of the ordinary. And then everybody came to see it. The Mirror's impressions of Mr. Larcombe and his son are that they're just the real Aussie type and are not liable to lose their blocks. The boy's a fresh-complexioned young Aussie, a nice lad, and seems to be more embarrassed by the public interest than his own good fortune. Then another article with Jim Larcombe's wife telling the story. "You'd better put it in the police station for the night, Jim." "Go on, it'll be just as safe at home. You can bet your life the wife will keep a good watch over it, and it'll be just as safe at home as in the mint." This conversation took place at Coolgardie on the afternoon that Jim Larcombe and his son drove into Coolgardie from the Larkinsville field with the Golden Eagle. Jim Larcombe tells part of the story, and Mrs. Larcombe, who has known the ups and downs of gold prospecting life, adds her piece, and it makes a romantic and humorous story. With news of Larcombe's lucky strike reaching Coolgardie, the newsbearers did not want to unduly excite Mrs. Larcombe, so they quietly informed her that Jim had found a bit of a nugget. "That's good," she replied, and womanlike wanted to know all about its size, its weight and its value. "Oh, just a few ounces," said the hotel keeper's wife, though no doubt she was simply bursting to tell the news that it weighed over 1,000 ounces. "Well, a few ounces will be acceptable," replied Mrs. Larcombe. Then Jim drove up to the hotel with the 5,000-pound slug. Of course, there were drinks all round and all that kind of thing, and meanwhile the kids and others were having a game with the Golden Eagle on a seat outside the hotel. Everyone wanted to feel the weight of it. Some could lift it and others couldn't. Anyway, night eventually arrived. "We'll take it home," decided Jim Larcombe, and so the Golden Eagle was transported to his little home. "I wanted to put the bedstead across the doorway," said Mrs. Larcombe in telling the story to the representative of the Daily News, but Jim said, "Don't be silly, it'll be all right on the kitchen table." Anyway, Mrs. Larcombe was taking no risks. She made Jim put the nugget under the bed, and Jim Larcombe, tired out by weeks of hard work and excitement, was soon fast asleep. But Mrs. Larcombe said she never slept a wink. "I heard a noise about 4 o'clock in the morning," said Jim Larcombe, and sat up only to find the wife trying to drag the Golden Eagle from under the bed. "What are you doing?" I asked, and the wife replied, "I'm going to see if it's all gold by scrubbing it in the bathtub." I said, "Don't be silly, it's all gold, all right, and you'll tear the lino," because she couldn't lift it and was trying to drag it across the floor. Mrs. Larcombe had her way about it and was not satisfied until the nugget was given its first bath and a good scrubbing, and when she saw that it was pure gold, Jim packed up straight away and carted the fortune into Kalgoorlie and deposited it in a bank.
I couldn't have slept while it was in the house, she said. And anyway, even now, it's a bit hard to go to sleep of a night thinking of our good luck and all that sort of thing. But Jim deserves it all because he's worked hard for many a year looking for a turn-up like this. The Golden Eagle, which is being exhibited in the Industries Hall at the Town Hall building, is attracting large crowds. Jim Larcombe and his son are in attendance, and men and women, young and old, fairly hang on to their words as they tell the story of how they unearthed the golden fortune. Mrs. Larcombe hovers around too, because even though they have sold the nugget to the government for £5,438, 4 shillings and 2 pence, and it's guarded by 3 armed policemen, she says she still wants to keep an eye on it and know that it's safe. Another article, Golden Eagle Stories. Jim Larcombe talks. Many of the stories that have been circulated concerning the discovery of the Golden Eagle Nugget are, in the words of Mr. Jim Larcombe, pure bunkum. Discussing the discovery of the £6,000 nugget yesterday with a representative of the Daily News, Mr. Larcombe exploded the yarn about his son fluking the mass of gold when marking out the ground on which to build a shed. There's a lot of luck about finding any gold, but for a couple of days before unearthing the Golden Eagle, we were following up signs which led me to believe that we'd find something. Mr. Larcombe then displayed in a small bottle several pieces of gold which he found in the ground close to where the Golden Eagle was discovered. I thought that there was something bigger about, and my boy got out to give me a hand. He had been there helping me for 2 days only when he stuck his pick into the nugget. "Wait until you see it," said Mr. Larcombe. "It will do your eyes good, even if it makes your mouth water." He said many prospectors at Kalgoorlie had gone into the bank with him as often as half a dozen times to look at the massive gold, and it seemed to fascinate them. Asked what it felt like when he first set eyes on the Golden Eagle, Mr. Larcombe replied, "Well, to tell you the truth, I can't say how I felt, but it wasn't bad. The biggest nugget I'd ever handled before was a 6-ounce slug, but when I got hold of the Golden Eagle, I couldn't lift it, and it's a great feeling to find a piece of gold so big that you can't lift it." Mr. Larcombe is having the small pieces of gold, weighing about half an ounce, which led him onto the Golden Eagle, made into a ring for Mrs. Larcombe. He reckons his son is the youngest holder of a miner's right in Australia. "He's a good lad too," added Mr. Larcombe. Mr. Larcombe is firmly convinced that Larkinville will develop into a fine field. "I'll guarantee this 20,000 quid's worth of gold comes out of there in the past few weeks," he said. And he received confirmation of the estimate from Mr. Vince Burkett of Kalgoorlie, who motored Mr. Larcombe and his son to Perth to finalise arrangements with the government regarding the exhibition of the Golden Eagle. Mr. Larcombe thinks the reef, which shed the Golden Eagle, is not far removed from where the big nugget was found. "I wouldn't be surprised any day to get word that it's been located on my own claim." His claim is not the regulation 25 by 25 yards alluvial claim. It's only 15 yards on one boundary, and thereon hangs a tail. Not long before finding the Golden Eagle, Mr. Larcombe's neighbours on one side thought the pegs were wrong. Anyway, there was a bit of an argument, according to Mr. Larcombe, and rather than have anything in the nature of a dispute, he told his neighbours to put their pegs in where they thought it was correct. They did so and expressed satisfaction, but it meant that Mr. Larcombe gave away 10 yards of his ground. "Anyway, it brought me luck," he said with a laugh, even though he realises that if the reef is struck on his property, it might be found that he gave away a fortune without a murmur. And in the Perth Sunday Times, a lucky pair, reward of perseverance, Larcombe and son back on their claim. After taking the 1,135-ounce slug into Kalgoorlie on Thursday week, Jim Larcombe and his 16-year-old son on Tuesday were back at their claim without any undue waste of time and were pottering around Larkinville as if they hadn't a pound to call their own. The father was born at Kadina in South Australia and came to Coolgardie as a lad in 1895. He and Mickey Larcombe were boys together in the old camp. He has been in and out of the prospecting game for most of his life. "This is the first time I've had a turn-up," he told the Sunday Times. "It's nearly always sent me back to wages. I had an offer from Queensland to put my own price on the slug, but I'm doing nothing yet." Young Jim Larcombe, who actually discovered the famous slug, is a big lad for 16. Peculiar enough, he is the youngest prospector on the field. He takes his good luck without any trace of excitement. He has been 5 weeks on the field, but some time back had to put his hand to woodcutting to help the house going. The Larcombes covered in the portion of the hole in which the slug came and intend to put a number of men on with dry-blowing machines in order to test the claim further. When they unearthed the famous slug, it took them a while to realise it all. One set of scales was too small, and the golden piece was thrown onto another set in the store, where it weighed down a 16-pound bag of sugar. I thought its weight was between 60 and 62 pounds. The actual weight was 1,125 ounces. And it talks about the fortunate digger, James Joseph Larcombe was born in 1914 and educated at St Anthony's Convent of Mercy at Coolgardie. He's the son of James Joseph Larcombe, president of the Coolgardie Prospectors and Leaseholders Association and formerly Coolgardie delegate to the Goldfields Water Supply Union. His father, for many years, travelled over the goldfields, prospecting new areas and mining leases at Bonnievale, Coolgardie, Westonia and Burbanks with little success. They had only taken over the block on the 8th of January. It had been abandoned by Mr. Sheehan. And there is a plaque at the place where it was unearthed. It says the famous Golden Eagle Nugget symbolised hope for Western Australians at a time when there was very little. A 16-year-old Jim Larcombe found the famous 1,135-ounce plus nugget on the 15th of January 1931. Jim was working on his father's Larkinsville lease when he struck the huge nugget with his pick. 1931, Western Australia was in the second year of a major worldwide depression, and tens of thousands of West Australians were out of work and had little prospects of a life without sustenance. The finding of the Golden Eagle boosted a gold rush to Larkinsville, near Widjamutha, and made many people believe there was hope. Society should not forget milestone events like finding the Golden Eagle. The event created great excitement, lifted people's spirits, and was to spur a generation of young West Australians into seeing a future in gold mining. And some follow-up articles. It is understood a powerful English and American mining group is interested in the district. And it also said that Mr. Brown, on an adjoining block, had actually uncovered a 70-ounce slug prior to the Golden Eagle being discovered. And the Golden Eagle was measured and it was 26.5 inches by 11.5 inches. The nugget was exhibited at the King's Hall in Parliament House. Nearly every spectator asked permission to lift it, but some of them failed in their effort. And it was on its way to Adelaide en route for London where it would be exhibited. The curious crowd paid 1 shilling each, and it raised £50 for the unemployed in 2 hours. It was sold to the Western Australian government and became part of the state gold collection. And in December 1931, at the height of the Depression, along with other large gold specimens in the collection, it was smelted to realise the gold value for state funds. So a little on the Larcombe family. The first Larcombe to come out to Australia was Emmanuel Larcombe. He was born in 1827 in Pitney, Somerset, England. He married Caroline Wallace on the 7th of February 1855 at Langport, Somerset, England, at the Church of St John the Baptist, when Emmanuel was 28 and Caroline 19. They had 12 children with 9 surviving infancy. They left England on the 20th of July 1856 from Southampton with their firstborn William, who was 9 months old. They sailed on the Switzerland. Unfortunately, William died on their voyage near Indonesia on the 19th of September. They arrived in Port Adelaide, South Australia on the 27th of October 1856. They ran a dairy and cheese factory at Skilly Creek in the Clare Valley. Their son, Joseph Aaron Larcombe, was the 4th born child. He was born on the 9th of May 1861 at Skilly Creek, which is short for Skilligelly Creek. Joseph married Annie Elizabeth McCabe on the 9th of May 1886 at Kadina, South Australia. They had 2 children, James and Henry. By 1887, they were living at Broken Hill. Joseph died of bladder stones that he'd been suffering from for 3 weeks on the 13th of April 1889 in Broken Hill. He was only 27 and his son Henry was only 9 days old. Annie remarried to Thomas Oliver Smith of Broken Hill in Adelaide in 1894 and had a further 3 children. After their marriage in Adelaide, they moved to Coolgardie, Western Australia. Thomas Oliver Smith died on the 2nd of April 1902 on a remote track between Broken Hill and Coolgardie, aged only 37. Their youngest son was only 2. In 1919, Annie moved with the sons from a second marriage to Adelaide, and Annie died in Adelaide in 1927 at the age of 63. Her eldest child, James Joseph Larcombe, was young Jim's father. He was born on the 21st of January 1888 at Kadina in South Australia, and he married Margaret Ellen Murphy, known as Maggie, on the 27th of January 1912 in Fremantle, Western Australia. Maggie's father was Jeremiah Murphy. He'd been born at Ballycleve, Kerry, Ireland in May 1847. Jeremiah arrived with his mother Ellen and his brother Michael on the 26th of December 1860 to Fremantle on the Escort. Jeremiah obtained a hawker's licence on the 5th of December 1883 at Greener Flats near Geraldton, Western Australia, and 10 months later married Ellen Farrell on the 21st of August 1884 in Geraldton. He was 37 and Ellen 22, and they had 3 children, Maggie being the oldest. It seems that Ellen left Jeremiah in early 1886 as he put an advertisement on the 20th of March. Any persons indebted to me are hereby cautioned not to pay money to my wife on my account. I further give notice that I will not be responsible for any debts contracted by my wife, Ellen Murphy, after this date. Jeremiah Murphy, Backflats. Jeremiah again applied for a hawker's licence at Geraldton on the 12th of May 1888. Ellen must have returned as they had Maggie in 1888, another daughter in 1890 and a son in 1896. On the 14th of September 1901, at Kew, Western Australia, Jeremiah applied for a gold mining lease on the ground known as the Ingleston Consols, situated at Meekatharra and contained 12 acres. Jeremiah died on the 12th of March 1910 at Geraldton from enteric fever at 55. Ellen remarried in 1915 and died in 1919 at Geraldton, aged 53. Jim and Maggie had 4 children. Young Jim was the second-born child. After their find, the family purchased a hotel at Kalgoorlie in 1936 and aptly named it the Golden Eagle Hotel. And in the Perth New Call and Bailey's Weekly, on the 27th of April 1939, the Golden Eagle finder scores as racehorse owner. Jim Larcombe, finder of the famous Golden Eagle Nugget 8 years ago, is having a good run as an owner of racehorses. Recently, he was represented by 2 good winners at Kalgoorlie, and last Saturday he had his colours carried to victory at Goodwood by Madam Murphy, a filly, who had also won on the same course at her previous start. It will be recalled that Jim Larcombe, whilst prospecting near Widgymultha with his 16-year-old son, struck it rich when the boy put his pick into a nugget. Larcombe went in for hotel keeping and does not seem to have looked back. His ventures, both in pubs and horses, have come out on the right side of the ledger, apparently. Maggie died in Kalgoorlie on the 30th of September 1942 at the age of 54, and Jim Sr. died on the 6th of August 1954 in Kalgoorlie, aged 66. Young Jim's older sister Annie Josephine Larcombe, was born on the 19th of March 1913 in Fremantle. She married Thomas Davidson Hall, known as Dave, in 1939 at Kalgoorlie when she was 26 and Thomas 29. Thomas was a carpenter and they had 3 children, Bernard, Margaret and Graham. Annie died on the 4th of August 1965 at East Coolgardie, aged 52. And young Jim, what became of him? Well, he was born on the 23rd of September 1914 at Fremantle. In February 1931, it says Lucky Larcombe, formerly of Fremantle. The lucky young finder of the Golden Eagle, Jim Larcombe, is a Fremantle boy, having been born in Bellevue Terrace in 1914. And when the nugget was on display in the town hall, Larcombe Sr. reminded James Shepherd of the City Council that he was at one time an employee of the council at less than 3 notes a week. Dame Fortune has smiled upon him since, and he was last week a guest of the council. In 1936, young Jim was working as a contractor at Coolgardie, and he married Lily May Sorrell, known as Lil, in Boulder, Western Australia in 1937. They had a son, Jim, and a daughter, Frances. And in January 1942, his Perth pals call him the Indian. So when Jim Larcombe, the man who found the Golden Eagle Nugget, came from the goldfields on a trip to the city, he jokingly donned a turban as his national dress. Even a broken ankle hasn't cramped his sense of humour. And Jim died on the 26th of August 1975 at Kalgoorlie at the age of 60, and Lil died in Perth aged 84 in the year 2000. His younger sister Mary Grace Larcombe was born in 1916 at Coolgardie. She married Bernard William Walsh in 1940 at Kalgoorlie. Bernard was killed in World War II at the Kokoda track in Papua New Guinea when he was only 25. Mary then married William George Murphy in 1948 at Kalgoorlie when she was 32 and William 48. They owned a store at Kalgoorlie, and Mary died on the 3rd of August 1951, aged only 35. And his younger sister Patricia Mary Larcombe was born on the 1st of December 1919 at Coolgardie. She married mate Tomic, known as Mort, in 1946 in Boulder, and Patricia died on the 25th of February 1987 at Kalgoorlie, aged 67. So the amazing story of the Golden Eagle Nugget.
If you are interested in sharing your story on my podcast, Family History Mysteries, please go to my Facebook page and send me a message. If you would like some assistance in filling in the gaps in your family tree to see what mysteries you solve, please get in touch. And don't forget, you can have early access to episodes by subscribing, and you'll also gain access to bonus episodes.